Grace, let's come to you next. These political rows sort of bubble up from time to time, and then after a few days, another event happens, and the news media is dominated by something else. This seems to me to be on a different scale from the sort of inappropriate remarks that people have made in the past.
Yeah, it's absolutely horrific, and the kind of non-apology that was given just makes it far worse. But I think actually, Iain, you raise a really good point there, which is that we always treat these problems of kind of racist abuse as an issue of kind of one or two bad apples. It's one bad individual who said one bad thing. And then we don't look at the kind of systematic perpetuation of a culture of racism in major institutions, and particularly, in this case, in the Conservative Party as a whole. I don't think you can just say, it just so happens that we're seeing all of these random, statements made from, there have been lots of statements made by senior Conservative Party members, and they're all completely separate from one another. And it just so happens that there's lots of bad people who happen to be racist. And in fact, I think you can say this across a number of different institutions. And that issue of institutional racism is something that the Conservative Party has frequently said, it doesn't exist. It's just, an individual moral failing. And that's actually, I think, the problem. And it's why we keep getting these scandals over and over again and nothing ever really done about it.
But that was exactly what was said about the Labour Party and anti-Semitism, wasn't it?
Well, no, I mean, exactly. That's the point, right? It's always a case that rather than seeing these as institutional issues that require communication, training, the dissemination of different ideas, it's just like there's one bad guy at the top, or there's one bad person who said one bad thing. And I never subscribed to that idea. I thought, yes, there's a problem of anti-Semitism, there's problems of racism, there's problems of Islamophobia. How do you tackle that? It's by accepting that racism is a structural problem. It's actually foundational to, much of our society. So how do we combat that? It is about talking to people, about engaging with people, and undermining the stereotypes, the very harmful stereotypes upon which a lot of this stuff is based.
Angela, what do you make of this?
I've been unable to believe that it's taken the Prime Minister all day until about 10 minutes before we came on here to finally get his spokesperson to admit that this was racist. It's the definition of racist to say that looking at a named person makes you hate all black women. So not only is it racist, it's sexist, and it incites violence because he said she should be shot. Now, he's not apologised for saying that. He said he was rude about her, so there has been no apology from him. And there's been no real apology.
He says he's tried to phone her twice.
Well, I'm not sure. I'm not surprised she doesn't want to pick up the phone to somebody she's never met who has treated her like that. She will now be, as she always has been in her career, and remember, she's a pioneering the first black woman MP. She's a pioneer, whether you like her or not. She's due some respect. And why should she pick up the phone to somebody she's never met who has caused another huge pile-on and made her feel unsafe? She said she feels frightened as a result of this. So, he hasn't apologised. Where's the professionalism, accountability and integrity that Rishi Sunak talked about? They should give the money back. And we should look also, I think, to see whether TPP, which is the company that he runs, and him are fit and proper recipients of government contracts, NHS contracts. The NHS has a huge black workforce. If he's got that sort of attitude to black people and women, then it all needs to be looked at. And the minimum that the Tory party should do, if he's a member of the Conservative Party, is suspend him.
I think he was the treasurer of the party at one stage.
He has an OBE. They should look at all of that, but they should certainly give the money back.
Ms Abbott, at the end of her statement, said, "I'm currently not a member of the Parliamentary Labour Party, but remain a member of the Labour Party itself. Yeah. So I'm hoping for public support from Keir Starmer."
Which she got today.
Is it not,
very strongly.
Wouldn't it be a sign of sort of a duty of care for him to readmit her to the parliamentary party?
Well, we have an independent process which is independently overseen by lawyers, which is ongoing, and that nobody, and I'm a member of the NEC, can interfere in. So since the anti-Semitism stuff,
I don't think that's true in the case of the parliamentary party, is it? I mean, the chief whip or the leader can just readmit someone to the parliamentary party. But
she's suspended pending this investigation, which is ongoing. So, I mean, I personally...
As an act of kindness, I think surely that ought to be considered now, because if you read her statement... I'm not trying to get an onion out of my pocket, but, she's clearly very upset by this, understandably so.
Quite right.
Yeah.
Quite right. And there's a lot
Would you like to see her come back?
I personally...
you can't say because you're on the NEC.
I can't say because I'm on the NEC. I've always regarded Diane Abbott as a pioneer, the first black woman MP who, as I said earlier, is due a lot of respect. I have a great deal of respect for her.
Ian Birrell, what do you make of this?
Well, obviously it's abhorrent, it's grotesquely racist. This won't have just been a one-off thing that he said, it's obviously his views, which is really disturbing. I think it also throws into perspective a bigger issue, which is the whole issue of party funding. Here's a guy who's given £10 million to the Tory party. Why do people like that give £10 million? He used to be a Green, now he's a Tory. We saw it with Bernie Ecclestone, who gave money to both the Tories and to Labour. Why do they do it? Because they want to get something back. He's a man who gets all his money
Could be an act of philanthropy, and you're so cynical.
Philanthropy, but then also we have a system whereby we know that these people end up in the House of Lords. We're about the only country in the world which actually legitimises corruption and says if you give enough money, you can get a seat for life in Parliament. I really hope that Keir Starmer is going to deal with this and deal with the obscenity of the House of Lords and all the party donors going in. But I think it really throws into question, yet again, the sleazy way that we fund politics in this country, the sleazy way that these people operate, the relationships of these sorts of people, and we need to just really look into this. Personally, I loathe the idea of state funding for parties, but I think it's the least bad option. But we just have a system which legitimises corruption, and that's what we're seeing again here. A guy gets all his money from state contracts, flips around the political parties, has really abhorrent views, and he even lends Rishi Sunak, who's half as rich as him, his helicopter to use. There's something fundamentally wrong in the way we fund politics in this country.
The unspoken story here, not on this, but on party funding, is that I have yet to meet any politician, Labour, Conservative, Liberal Democrat, Green, SNP, whatever, who actually enjoys dealing with party donors. They absolutely loathe it. I don't know whether you can... whether you agree with that, Angela, but I suspect that if you get a call from Labour Party HQ saying, Angela, we'd quite like you to come and meet this group of donors, your heart slightly sinks.
I mean, all I can say is, having visited Germany, where they do respect democracy because they lost it for a while, they have a system of state funding there, which I think works really well. And it also demonstrates that the country itself has... a commitment to ensuring that democracy can be funded. Now, I know it's not popular, and you yourself said that you loathe the idea, but it is, in my view, by far the least worst option. It makes things transparent and fair, and it gets everybody away from this awful sort of hunt for money.
Well, the other option is to have a mass political party that has support from members, from trade unions, from a kind of countervailing power that's capable of lobbying against the interests of the private sector, because at the moment we have this deep imbalance in every area of society where basically private capitalists are able to get their way over and over again within the state. Interestingly enough, I talk about this in the book with the example of Lex Greensill and his relationship with David Cameron, and actually his relationship with many different parts of the British state. This wasn't just about an individual politician and a businessman. This man had links with vast areas of the British state, used those to get NHS contracts, and then when his business was potentially going to go under, used that to try and lobby for emergency funding, as did many businesses that we won't have heard about. So this is, as you mentioned, it's a question of corruption. We use corruption as a word that applies to kind of, dark, impoverished countries over there, and we never actually recognise the ways in which those corrupt links between the public and private sector are used to promote the interests of, mainly the wealthiest and most powerful people in our economy.
And by the way, trade union money has virtually been legislated out of existence by very,
well, that's simply not true. Unite give millions to the Labour Party.
No, they do not, by very, very one-sided legislation, which makes it virtually impossible for trade unions to now give money to the Labour Party.
Well, I haven't got the list of party donations here, but most of the big trade unions are major donors to the Labour Party.
Well, you'll find that the changes to the trade union legislation have made that much, 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 much harder, and it's been deliberately done to impoverish the Labour Party so that the Conservative Party can have a huge funding advantage, which they've
Alexander,
now got.
you wanted to come in?
Oh, well, I was just going to reflect on Grace's comment about the mass unit. The trade unions do give significantly large funds to the Labour Party, so trade unions do give money. People do give money to all parties. I think
and they've been relentlessly attacked by Tory governments over the last several decades.
And democratically decided that money. It's not given by one bloke with abhorrent views.
I mean, that is the thing. We have this system of basically the cartelization of our political parties as they've been removed from their mass bases. The people who are able to organise most effectively behind the scenes, the people with the most money, with the closest links to various different areas of the state, have gained this massive upper hand when it comes to lobbying our politicians and actually lobbying state institutions. It's no wonder that the vast majority of people feel as though they have no voice in our democracy, because they basically don't.
Just before we move on, in a previous life, you wrote speeches for David Cameron in opposition when he was determined to detoxify the Tory brand and made, I think, the Conservative Party far more attractive to people from different minorities. I mean, this sort of thing, both of these stories this week, Lee Anderson and this one, there'll be lots of people listening to this programme who are from an ethnic minority background, who may have voted Conservative in one or two of the previous elections, but just now think, well, I can't do that anymore. David Cameron, I don't know which part of the world he's in at the moment as Foreign Secretary, but he must say all that work for nothing. We've got to a point where we've got more people from ethnic minorities in the cabinet than ever before. That wouldn't have happened without those measures.
It's true, and also, Saida Walsey's been very strong about Islamophobia within the party, the acceptable dinner party racism, as she called it very rightly. There is a real problem, I think, still within the Conservative Party, reflecting wider problems in society to do with racism, to do with Islamophobia. And they don't crack down on it enough. But it's a wider problem, I think, within society. And we could touch on other issues also. Let's look at the attitudes towards people with disabilities, the minority we never talk about, who are still probably the most excluded minority in this country, and we never hear anything. But what we do hear all the time from now the Conservative Party is this attack on the idea that diversity training and a little bit of money is a terrible thing, and we hear that local government's in a bad state this week because of a few, little bit of money going on diversity training. Well, actually, I think maybe we need a bit more diversity training, clearly, in a lot of places, because we've got such problems across society.
I just simply, this calculation is not true. Look at the Conservative government at the moment. It's one of the most diverse government that has ever been. We have an Asian background Prime Minister. The Minister for Women Equality is a black woman. We've had Asian chancellors. We have black chancellors. We are the most diverse party. We've even had, dare I say, women leaders, which the Labour Party has not had.
Not socially diverse.
Well,
I think this is the Conservative Party actually the most diverse, the most reflective party of modern Britain out there.
Why can't it call out racism when it sees it then? Why has it taken the Prime Minister all day after sending out two ministers, including Mel Stride, who was his campaign manager, to make fools of themselves on the television this morning, denying that what Hester said was actually racist?
But it is clearly racist. We've said that. But what I'm saying is the Conservative Party does not have this problem, because look at the cabinet. We are the most reflective modern British body of any party out there.
Problem with tokenism and with the idea.
I don't say having the first Asian heritage.
This is actually, arguably,
that's exactly correct.
No, but the idea of tokenism, which is that you can place, people from ethnic minorities, women in positions of power, and then say we don't have any problem with racism because look, we've got people from ethnic minorities in positions of power.
They've earned their places. Nothing placed there. These people are the best and brightest in their field, and they've earned their places.
But what you're saying is that we can't be racist because we have people from ethnic minorities in positions of power, which is just wrong. It's the same absurd kind of thinking
what I'm
as
saying is we're not institutionally racist, because people, Asian people, minority people, thrive in the Conservative, rise to the very top of the Conservative Party.
What you just said is we can't be institutionally racist because we have people from ethnic minorities in senior positions.
Thrive in the
That's
Conservative Party.
the problem, because it doesn't look at the foundations of these inequalities, and it kind of, the whole Conservative policy is to deride the idea of institutional racism as kind of, this is the thing that we've got in the US, where institutional racism is cultural Marxism, and it's all a big conspiracy designed to, basically kind of undermine certain voices within society. And that is the problem. If you can't admit to the idea of institutional racism, then everything is by definition.
There are lots of other subjects to cover, which we will do so over the next 40 minutes. It's 8:20.
This is LBC.